A hectic couple of months to start 2025, a period in which Everton went from nailed-on certs to be involved in another relegation scrap, and now being effectively safe from the drop, calms down a little in March. The Toffees have just 2 games this month. The players have been off on a warm weather break in the Middle East, and there are some rays of light when it comes to the walking wounded ahead of this weekend's trip to Wolves. Hello Blues, and welcome to the Evertonia podcast. I'm here with Adam and Andy to reflect on the general state of the Blues as we get this little hiatus to draw some breath. Changes are afoot as the Free King group prepare for a busy summer, and we'll discuss the reports that Kevin Thelwell will be moving on at the end of the season. And we'll also look back at that draw at Brentford and chat about what that game might indicate for what's in store at Wolves on Saturday. Adam, Andy, how are we?
Basking in the kind of relaxation of Everton, like just having a break. And I think even though we were on a great run of momentum and it felt like we could play a game every day and it would be fun, I felt as
like
if
we almost were playing.
Yeah. But I think actually taking a step back for everybody, which felt like at just the right time. But I think Brentford, and I know we'll come on to it a bit more later, but Brentford felt like it had the potential to be one game too many, and it almost was. So I think just to run away from Brentford with kind of the 1-1, which could have been better, but anyway, and just to kind of almost finish the first phase of David Moyes' return, I suppose, and just have a kind of a long look at it and a little breathe, and for the players to go away and do their thing. I think it's just been a really nice break, and it gives us a chance to reflect, I suppose. But Everton being Everton, it's never quiet. So we've always got, it's always some kind of drama or some kind of something to talk about. But no, I feel kind of really, really pleased that it's panned out how it's panned out, and I'm really, really looking forward to the Wolves game. So maybe it's added to that kind of renewed vigor for watching Everton play football, which is effectively what we're all here for, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's a bit I'd really focus on over the last couple of days. I was really disappointed for the first time in a long time that we didn't have a game at the weekend to look forward to. It's felt like quite a long gap, and sometimes these breaks come, whether it's international duty or in this case just because we're knocked out of a cup competition, where you go, oh thank God Everton can't spoil my weekend, but actually the way we're playing, yeah, you're right, Andy. I think with injuries biting, it does give us a chance to not only get players back to fitness, but as you say, reflect, look at the real strides we've made. The fact that we're facing Wolves, a side who we're still close to in the table, but the gap has really opened up, and that's allowed us this space to breathe, to start enjoying Everton again. And yeah, I was kind of sad on Saturday when something wasn't happening. Got to enjoy watching Anthony Gordon do a full Anthony Gordon thing, so there was that, I guess. But yeah, just a quiet non-Everton weekend, which turns out can be easy managed. And like you, I'm really looking forward to Saturday's game. And yeah, you touched on it there, Kevin Thelwell. That's a big news. Something has to come and jump up on the news feed, and luckily it's not a sort of picture of the Everton logo on Instagram and it's the Premier League docking us points for, I don't know, the seagull celebration or the decore at the end of the derby. But it's still yeah, no, I'm really tempting fate there, but it's still definitely a big sign of things to come ahead of what was already going to be a massive summer in terms of recruitment, in terms of necessary incomings and then major outgoings. This makes it start to hit home that little bit more as we creep towards the end of the season. So lots to look forward to, still a bit to be a little hesitant and tentative about, but it genuinely feels very exciting right now. So Saturday can't come soon enough, really, for me.
True. Yeah, change is definitely on the menu. There was a report by what do they call themselves? The I paper or I News or whatever, saying that some recruitment reshuffles were going to be in order, and I think the silence around Kevin Thelwell's position over the last few weeks since the takeover was announced and Moyes came in, I think that kind of spoke volumes as to the fact that perhaps they were going to look elsewhere. So so let's let's talk about Thelwell. I think he will probably be very disappointed not to be able to be given the opportunity to try and take the project forward, having worked really with one hand tied behind his back. Maybe he'd say two hands tied behind his back over over 3 years of some pretty severe austerity in terms of being able to spend money on transfers, and he's had to wheel and deal. And there's obviously been some debate over the success of that. I think personally, the longer time goes on, and players like Beto and Lindstrom starting to show a bit of worth, I think that the longer time goes, the kinder we can look on his record. But Andy, how do you reflect on his 3 years?
That he's effectively put the foundations in for a really nice house in all the terrible weather through a dreadful winter, and he doesn't get to see it built, or he'll probably get to see it built from the road and have a look every now and again.
Yeah.
I do feel a little bit sorry for him in that sense, because I think it kind of will mirror how we feel maybe about Sean Dyche in time, because they were at times the only adults in the room when the club went through this massively turbulent time and where everything seems to be going wrong. And I think the value of their work may not be obvious at the moment, but I think we'll find in time that the foundations were good, and it allowed this thing to be built. I He's got bits wrong, but then every director of football in every position in the world. I mean, David, we all kind of have this David Moyes loving now, which is great because I like him. But when he was looking after the transfers in his first tenure, I mean, he got things wrong. You can't get everything right. If we're basing our opinion on of Kevin Thelwell on transfers, and we'll run through them all in a minute. I mean, yes, there were some there that you think, oh gosh, yeah, but every club in the world's like that, and you can't get everyone right. But I think he has done a very good job for Everton in trying circumstances, and only I think when we're probably on the top balcony of that house with a glass of wine in the sunshine might we look back and think, yeah, do you know what? Well done. That was a good job done at the time.
I guess that kind of makes you sort of Kevin McLeod in this sort of in this sort of world. Give him a nice wrap up as we look at his grand design finally come to life. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right that in some ways there are similarities with how he'll be viewed compared to Dyche. I think in some ways though, it's kind of a reverse, isn't it? Because Dyche built up a lot of respect both within the club and without it for the way that he managed us during tough times, and then that lustre gradually started to wear off, as we all know, towards the end of the season. Thelwell was often seen as not a complete success, but as you said, Lyndon, some of those signings have started to pay off now that Dyche has left the building. So I think history will probably judge him pretty kindly. I think, as you said as well, Lyndon, he's had his hands tied behind his back in terms of the manoeuvres he's had to make. I think similarly to Dyche, not just being the only adult in the room, but again, a mouthpiece for a non-existent regime. I think that's a really challenging role that doesn't normally fit under the remit of director of football. He's managed that very well and been very transparent. My first impressions of him weren't great. He felt like one of those naff middle managers at work, and coming in with an 120-point plan is a way to raise major alarm bells and deliver massive disappointment. I was just trying to do some sums in my head actually, to work out whether we'd actually achieved 120 points on the table during Kevin Thelwell's role as director of football. So yeah, write in with your answers, guys, and follow us on Evertonia's site on all the channels. Now you can see my face trying to do maths while I talk. Turns out I can't. But I think on the whole, you'd look at it as a success. He's not only balanced the books, but essentially kept us in business. I think he has at times made very sensible decisions that we would look to for any future director of football, which is try and recruit players with a high ceiling, develop them, and then sell them on at a profit. And even when that hasn't been totally satisfactory, with and Anana's a great example. I think a player who definitely came in under that pretense, and maybe again, possibly because of a manager, left for a tidy profit, but maybe not quite the profit we expected, and not under quite the right circumstances. But I think on the whole, 1-0 Mopé aside, a pretty good innings from Kevin Thelwell.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think he would probably, like Deitch, say that there's a book to be written about those last couple of years under Mashiri and the difficulties that both faced in trying to recruit for it to keep a team in the Premier League with that league, the breathing down your neck with points deductions and mandates that we couldn't spend any money. He would say that it was incredibly difficult maneuvering in a market where you've got to go almost cap in hand to clubs and say, well, we can offer you next to nothing down or nothing down and see if they'll see if they'll go for it. And obviously he was able to do enough maneuvering to get enough players in through the door to to keep the club afloat through both of their efforts. He's on the rare occasions that we did hear him speak. He always spoke very, very well. The excuse me, the feeling within the game is that he's a tremendously sound fella. It would be interesting, and we'll probably never know the answer to the question, but it will be interesting to know what the decision was based on from the Freaking Group's perspective. Is it purely just an exercise in clearing the decks to bring in their own people to set their own vision, and it's less a commentary on Thelwell's record and more, as I say, that desire to just start fresh and start with a new approach. And whether they bring in a direct replacement, I think, remains to be seen. I think the presence of David Moyes probably complicates that question. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the short term, at least, there isn't a direct replacement, but there is a structure around Moyes that puts him very much at the center of recruitment. But obviously there's wider things to be managed at a football club, from strategy from the academy and managing all the the myriad people that work at Finch Farm these days to keep that side of things running. It's a much bigger beast than when Moyes first arrived at Everton, a couple of decades ago.
He's got 131 points since he came in the door, but we had 8 of them taken away. So he's actually technically earned 123 points. So Adam, to answer your question, he's has made
KPIs.
He's done it. He's got 3 points in the bank. And he will get more before the end of the season. We hope. So well done, Kevin. You've done that. Should we go Thank you. It's probably wrong. Shall we go through Kevin Thelwell's signings since he got to Everton? And I say Kevin Thelwell's signings. I mean, few of these have a whiff of Sean Dyche about them, but we'll never know, will we?
Yeah, that is the question that you don't really know. Is there's definitely an influence from Lampard and Dyche, and it's almost impossible, I think, for a director of football. And some would argue that they probably shouldn't have 100% say, that a manager who's managing a team should always have some say. So yeah, let's crack on.
Maybe we should be crude here and say hit or miss.
I mean, why not?
Yeah, okay.
James Tarkowski.
Hit.
Yes.
Oh yeah, unquestionable
Yeah.
hit. I would say.
Dwight McNeil.
A hit.
A miss and then a hit. And now he's missed.
Okay.
He is
So,
very much missed.
Yeah. I'm doing a Rumpelstiltskin thing apparently for this, so strap in.
Ruben Vinagre.
I've forgotten he even played for us.
Yeah.
On loan, obviously.
Yes.
I mean, he was there to back up. He was there to be back up. We haven't got one of those this season. Another one would have been useful, wouldn't it, at some point?
Right.
But I mean, you can't really judge him, I suppose. But anyway,
he's currently playing for
probably
League of Warsaw, so I think
miss.
Yeah.
Connor
Yeah.
Cody. Ooh.
That's an interesting one because he certainly played his part. He certainly played his part, and I would think, on balance, better to have signed him than not.
I think I agree with that. I if I had to choose, if it's very black or white, hit or miss, I'd have to say hit.
Yeah.
Amadou Onana. Well, I mean,
I would say hit on the basis that we got a
yes.
large profit for him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kevin lives up to the lisped version of his name. He tends to Thelwell. All right, is that okay?
Don't know. I don't know if that's okay yet. I'll have a look in a moment.
Welcome to Dad Jokes Podcast.
Neil Mopay. Well, I think we can all agree on that one.
Just a joke, not a dad joke. Yeah, that's a very easy.
Yeah, that's not a joke. That's an actual. That happened.
Yeah.
I think Neil Mopay stands out as the one. If you think of Per Kroldrup as being David Moyes' biggest failure from his first spell, I think Neil Mopay is Kevin Thelwell's equivalent.
Adrissa Ghana Gay. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Success. Yes. Hit. Sorry.
Hit.
Yes. Hit.
Hit,
James
but also
Garner.
Sorry, just on Idrissa gave out an obvious hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
James Garner.
A hit.
Hit. Most definitely.
Ashley Young.
Yeah, I would say hit.
Hmm.
I think on balance again, he's.
I think the roles
he's have had him.
Yeah, the roles he's played. I mean, we've needed him.
Yeah.
Have to remind me what the hell his first name is. Danjuma.
Arnaud, don't you?
Arnaud Danjuma.
Yeah.
Well, can you blame Thelwell for that though? Really,
Well,
because
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yes, a miss, but possibly
could have been a
let
hit
down by his manager in that.
A missed
just
opportunity,
probably not a
essentially.
miss in terms. Sorry, Adam, I was talking heavy.
No, yeah. I was going to say, a missed opportunity because and clearly someone who Thelwell really rated, and I think that's another common thread with him, that you see there's certain players he likes to chase, and some of that he's been vindicated by the likes of Beto potentially in the long run, and Ndiaye, but Danjuma didn't quite work out that way, did it?
I think he had the pedigree, and he did kind of okay at Tottenham, but obviously not enough for them to keep him around. But I just think that he's a miss in terms of a character fit for Deitch, but under a different manager may well have been okay.
He'd be playing now, wouldn't
he? Yes, he would. I think so. Yeah.
Yusuf Chamiti.
Who knows?
Who knows?
We just can't tell. Hopefully.
I mean, I think, having seen him live in the Brentford game at the end of last season when he started, I think is that his only Premier League start for us still?
I suppose it must be, right?
I thought I could see completely the workings behind that one. I was like, okay, this kid's got something, definitely. He's got all bits to his game. It's all a bit raw, but it would be at his age. But I could certainly see it. I could see why. But he's just been unlucky. I mean, if he'd carried on in pre-season like he started his pre-season and kind of, he would have played lots of games this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shame really. Maybe we'll see him in the next few weeks. Jack Harrison.
This is where we need a grey area, I think. There's
another one where I think given the restrictions that he had and the loan market being one of the biggest avenues that he could go down, I think there was enough from Harrison's experience at Leeds to suggest that he would be a good signing. I think he functioned well in a Dutch setup.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think better to have had him than not. I would question, and we can talk about when we play the play director of football ourselves in a bit. We can talk about the merits of keeping him around. It seems as though we're not going to, but I think that I would have questions if Thelwell was staying around and we were decided to keep Harrison based on the evidence we've seen to date. I think then I would start to question it. But I think as a loan signing, adequate, and again, better to have had them than not.
Beto.
It's funny, before Brentford, you'd say, and he's starting to unquestionably turn into a hit. And again, you have to look at where we are right now, given that we have nobody else fit. Better to have Beto around, who's scored 5 very important goals in the last 5 games or 6 games. Whatever happens, I think from now will depend very much on if we let him go, how much do we get for him? I think how much value we get in a sale or how much value we get from keeping him will determine the answer to that question. So I think it's still early days for me.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to come down on one side of the fence for now. If you'd have asked this question a couple of months ago, it would be a pretty unanimous. And again, it comes down to how desperate Thelwell was to sign him. This is someone he's placed a lot of faith in at a time when, yes, it was an attractive deal in terms of not a big down payment, but also a huge transfer fee on someone you've really staked your, go back to the analogy, house on. So you would have said it was an unmitigated disaster, and selling him to the likes of Torino for a really small, paltry fraction of what we paid would have just been another Everton centre forward where that's been the case. Umanias, Cenk and you name it. So, but like you say, Lyndon, if that narrative changes, if we're looking at either a really useful striker who can calmly finish or someone who we potentially get a return on our investment for. Hit.
It was a really uncertain hit, wasn't it?
Well, that's a review better right there as well. So
yes.
We'll take that.
I mean, you'd argue he's actually paid for he's repaid his transfer fee we may end up giving out in the last month. Really, I mean, I'm not saying he's kept us in the Premier League single-handedly, but his goals have effectively got us safe this season, haven't they? And for that, I think you can add all the millions you like onto that. Really, Tim Irabunen.
I mean, from the evidence so far, you'd have to say a hit. A decent squad player as things stand, but with plenty of time to develop. Still young, but like James Garner, really.
Yeah.
Plenty of road ahead.
Yeah, hit for me.
And a clever bit of wheeler dealer with financial fair play as well.
Well, yes, that's the key part of it, isn't it? Yeah.
And I actually, on reflection, in that deal, I think we got the best of it.
Yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
Iliman Ndiaye is the most ridiculous question of the lot of them. He's easily my favourite player of the last few years. So hit. Jesper Lindstrom.
Again, I'd say if this was old manager, old Lindstrom, I guess, by that account, we wouldn't be seeing him, or we'd be seeing brief glimpses of him and going, that's a shame. You go miss, but he's had a real resurgence. Is he still someone that you would come out now and say, yeah, let's definitely spend maybe not what Napoli spent for him, but somewhere approaching that in the same realm where we are, I guess, with Harrison as a lone player who's done all right and might have room to grow? Probably not. on this stage, but he feels, and we've said this quite a few times, he feels like he's just at one goal away from real confidence. He's definitely shown real willingness down that right hand side. I think he's a good player, and it was a good deal for the club. So again, clever use of a low market. I'd say hit.
Agreed. I think he's showing his worth now in a Moyes system, where he's very important to Jake O'Brien down that right side and vice versa.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Jake O'Brien himself.
A hit.
A hit.
Yeah. Hit now he's playing.
I think he's finally playing, yeah.
It does help in this evaluation process for them to play some football, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Asmir Begovic, I'm not really sure. Well, I mean, hit.
Yeah.
He's good in as a backup when you're squaring up to have a scrap on the field.
He was
first
really
in there, so
he was really good in the fight, wasn't he?
so almost a literal hit.
Yeah.
Ora Mongala.
Yeah, I would say a hit. Yeah,
Yeah, I would as well. It's such a shame.
And yeah, desperately disappointing that that he got injured, because he was really starting to make that spot his own.
Yeah,
and that was a loan sign. I think if that form had continued, out of all of them, you'd be going, that's someone we should be acquiring on a permanent basis. So yeah, definitely a hit, but a shame.
Armando Broja.
Interesting one, because you've signed him injured. You signed him with an injury track record. But again, the reasons for it's pure desperation, really. I think it was a deadline day thing where they just thought, you know what, let's just get him in.
Yeah.
Hope he gets fit. Hope he can contribute. And it looked like he was going to.
Yeah.
I think it really was kind of a freak injury that he sustained. And I think he's just returned to resumed light training. So he could be back in enough time to demonstrate whether it was a decent loan acquisition. The £30 million fee, I don't know if he's got enough time to justify such a hefty fee, but we'll see. We'll see.
I think he definitely hasn't got enough time.
Yeah.
No. I think if you look at all the signings that we're a little bit uncertain over, they tend to be strikers. And we've said this before, unless you are at the very top end of the market, a hit or miss, it's probably going to be a miss, but you might just find an Ilman Njai. But a lot of the time, you're going to get someone who's a bit inconsistent and unpolished in the likes of Beto. You're going to buy a player with potential, but injuries might rule that out, which is Chamiti and, in this case, Brozier. So, and then Neil Mope is Neil Mope. It's the hardest position to buy for when you've got money. When you've not got a lot, it gets even trickier.
Everyone wants a goal scorer.
Yeah.
And if they've got a good goal scorer, they're not going to give him up. So it's exactly as you say. What's left, if you don't have a budget, is you really are trying to make something work. You know, you're speculating, you're rolling the dice a bit. So, yeah.
And finally, Charlie Alcaraz.
I think he's on his way to being a hit for me.
Yeah.
I think.
Very early days, but yeah.
So that was quite a lot of hits there, really. And the Instagram feed, I just got all that information from. I've got no way of telling whether this next bit is correct, but let's assume it is. Total spend 140 million, total received 228 million.
Well, yeah, his best work has certainly been done on the sale side. I think in the article that I wrote for Evertonia, I think there were 4 or 5 players that netted about 175 million. So Gordon,
Richarlison,
Moise Kean, Amadou Onana, and whoever the 5th one is.
Luca Dean was before him, wasn't it?
He was before him, yes. So it would have been Alex Iwobi.
Yeah.
So he's certainly done some good work there. I don't think we could really look at any of those players and feel as though we got a raw deal. I mean, I think someone like Richarlison was probably worth more to us emotionally and maybe even more than emotionally than the 55 or whatever it is million that we'll get for him. But he hasn't really ripped up any trees at Tottenham so far. So I think we got a good deal there.
Yeah. And again, I think if the manager had more faith in Onana at the time, that could potentially been a more lucrative transfer out as well. Moise Kean deal was good, but again, that's another example of a striker right there who, in the right environment, can flourish. You can take a punt on someone, and it doesn't work in one place; it does in another.
Yeah.
Iwobi, considering he was in the last year of his contract, he knows a player who's important to us. It's a good fee. And he's also let a lot of players go on frees and freed up a lot of the wage bill with, high profile players that have helped us keep the lights on. So,
I think in all, it's Thelwell hit, isn't it? Really?
I would say so. I think on balance, you'd have to be fairly positive about the work that he's done, given those those constraints, and it doesn't compare all that unfavorably with Marcel Brands. I mean, Brands brought in some good players, but he also brought in a lot of players that perhaps weren't in his wheelhouse, particularly under Ancelotti. He might not have spent 20 odd million on a 29-year-old Alan. James Rodriguez probably doesn't come in on whatever ridiculous salary he was on. So yeah, he was one of those instances where you have to kind of think the manager's got the upper hand here. And the same with Benitez, really. Benitez was responsible for Luka Dean leaving. And thankfully he didn't have more time to do any more damage.
So I wonder I wonder what that role will be next.
Well, that's the question, really, isn't it? And as I said before, we've got Moyes, who has in the past sort of expressed his opinion on directors of football, almost to say that he would sort of grudgingly, work alongside one, but not necessarily it wouldn't necessarily be his first choice in terms of structure. And I think that we may see that play out in whatever decision is made, whatever restructuring follows.
Yeah, and I think to broaden it a little bit, if we were looking at whatever David Moyes does in the next couple of years, in the same way we've just looked at Thelwell and said it's someone who has given us more of a base to work from, given us a foundation, and allowed us to take that next step forward. Because that's essentially what Thelwell has done. Like you said, Andy, he's not getting to live the easy life in his nice new plush pad in the country, but he's definitely given us that step forward towards it. If Moyes can do the same thing on the pitch, it's a result. But yeah, I can't see it being the same system. I think one glaring omission, I guess, when you look at that list and the thing that you mentioned, and maybe something that's trying to be corrected, which extra funds do make more possible, right? Which is more players from that youth system coming through, which you would say is a bit in the negative column there. But again, how much of that is down to the situation we're in, and how much of that has been down to particularly the previous manager not really wanting to put too much faith in that youth side or recruiting for it. And maybe some of those players coming through that Thelwell has helped to recruit. They've not been as many as maybe in past years, but there could be a few potential Branthwaite and their ilk in there that we've not yet seen come to the surface. But that's clearly an area that they want to focus on, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Because you look at that balance sheet with Anthony Gordon and with the potential sales that can come from Branthwaite again in the future and other players, it's pure profit. And that's the polar opposite to where we were, as you said, Lyndon, in that Marcel Brands led with Ancelotti trolley dash towards big old players with big old wages.
Yeah, I think along with the women's team, I think the academy has been largely neglected over the last 2-3 years as we have dealt with the PSR restrictions. Mashiri probably not able and unwilling to put any more money into it. We used to go out and make more speculative purchases like Chimiti, and I'm thinking of players like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, where you're not necessarily bringing kids in that you've had since they've been in the club since 7 or 8, but you are sort of hand cherry picking potential else at other clubs. And I think just the lack of investment has restricted that ability. And at the same time, anyone who's with any remote prospects has been sold off.
Tom Cannon, Ellis
Tom
Sims.
Cannon, sorry, thank you. Suddenly the names just went straight out of my head. And Ellis Sims. So, let's not suggest that either one would be it would be first choice striker right now, but they would certainly be able to contribute something if they were still here during injury crises like the one we're facing now. Let's talk a bit about Brentford. Obviously, the Brentford game was a week ago, and is sort of rapidly disappearing in the rearview mirror. But I think, given that it was an away game, given that I mentioned that some of the players are some of the longer term injured players are starting to come back. I don't think any of them are going to be ready for this weekend, so it's probably going to be the same again. And so I think we can probably take a lot of what happened at Brentford and apply it to Wolves, with the caveat that we're going to have a week's rest and some downtime and some time to sort of enjoy themselves in the Middle East. So I think certainly would be a lot fresher. I think from the Brentford performance, I think you mentioned it, Andy, that it felt like a game too far. And at times, even though I was desperately disappointed we didn't win it because of the chances that we had, I think if you'd said Everton will get a point from this game based on the fact that they're playing 3 or 4 days after, a sort of another tough game against Manchester United, I think we would have taken that, wouldn't we?
100%. And actually, there was a mini fist pump at full time. And for a 1-1 draw at Brentford, you wouldn't necessarily expect that. But and actually, even the way the game panned out, you wouldn't think that. But I just thought it is one of those little kind of bridge results, really, that you'll probably not remember much about the game in a couple of years' time, but it just keeps the whole thing moving at the moment. We are 7 unbeaten. We didn't lose 1-0, a bit disappointingly, having missed a few chances. It was a positive result. Yes, we could have gone on and won it, but I think I was thinking, and I said to someone I was talking to before the game, if you offered me a draw right now, I would take it and just get the break, afterwards. I thought it was a really positive result for us, and yeah, we can talk about Beto missing chances, and but I thought the result was the most important thing that night. Having said that, the kind of extension of Everton's fun again. I mean, we attack. We do try and score goals. We try and win the game, and it's so refreshing to watch it. And we weren't even that good, really, at Brentford. I didn't think they were great either. But you could clearly see there was a plan to score a goal. This is how we're going to do it. And I didn't kind of fear that the thing where if we'd gone 1-0 down in first half injury time 3 months ago, you're thinking, oh gosh, this second half's going to be a long old job, isn't it? But actually, I thought, well, we'll be all right. We'll get one from somewhere, and it's just it just summed it up where we've managed to get to, I think. So yeah, I'm kind of pleased with the performance. No more than that, but pleased with it. It was kind of fun to watch at times, but also I think the most important thing, we got a positive result which just keeps us moving.
That's it. We said after the Manchester United game that it was nice to be disappointed again, and it's nice to see us missing chances, because we were starved of joy for so long. We've said that we're starved of little moments,
starved of chances.
Starved of chances. Yeah,
we weren't creating any at the end.
That's exactly it. I mean, think of that away game at Bournemouth. There was nothing. There was literally, if we were to try and pick apart those matches, minute by minute, what would you say about Everton other than not very good? There was no moment. So I don't really mind. It's a bit cliche. I don't mind Beto missing a few chances. I did at the time, having a week away. I mean, I've not been in the UAE, but mentally I probably have been, and it's a desert up there. But I don't really mind, on reflection, that we've got a striker who is putting himself into good positions and trying things, and it doesn't always come off, because that's something, isn't it? There were games where the likes of Calvert-Lewin would toil and would just head the ball to himself, and that would be his impact. So an Everton striker who lets us down, but is letting us down in the right way, I'm I'm kind of okay. I'm kind of okay with that. Um, I think you're right, Andy, in terms of it feeling like a game too far earlier. Look at our bench. We spoke before that game about the main selection dilemma seems to be Alcaraz or Decore. We didn't even have Decore. So you're talking about, and congratulations to him, by the way. I know he listens and now watches on our YouTube channel, Evertonia site. But the fact that we don't have any real options to come off the bench to cater for tired legs from a run of games where we still remain unbeaten. We stayed in the game, conceding a goal before half time. Yeah, it could have put us to bed, but we showed real resilience. Not a classic performance, but a real refreshing state of where we're at, that we will remain in games, we'll create chances. And it turns out, we said it earlier, Jake O'Brien is a footballer of Premier League standard. It can be done. He can win a game. He's man of a match in terms of vindicating what he's done and what Moyes has done by extension, by giving him a bit of confidence and a bit of faith and putting him in the starting lineup and just seeing, can he sink or swim? Can he do it in a position that's unfamiliar? Yes, to all counts. So really pleased for him. If he can pop up in with a goal every time Beto has one of those days, we'll be more than okay, won't we? So yeah, we'll take it. We'll move on, and we are, aren't we?
Yeah, we are moving on, and we'll take it, and we'll take it with the disappointment that we didn't win the game when we thought we should have done, and and probably would have done if we'd had a few more options. I mean, think about if we'd had Iliman Ndiaye or Dwight McNeil, Armando Broja, just different options to bring off the bench to go and win that game. And that's one of the best things that I can say since Moyes took over, is we are going out to try and win football matches. Whereas before, the game plan, and I don't want to put plans or words in Sean Dyche's mouth, but it just seemed as though the idea was to just go in and just try not to lose and just try and get a point, and that would be the summit of our ambitions, and anything else was gravy. And also under Dyche, the first goal was crucial. If we conceded the first goal, it was more or less, we used to throw up our hands and think game over. But we not only battled back to get the equalizer against Brentford, we probably should have won it. And I think that's the positive things you can take forward is, well, how good can we be when we actually have a good selection of players to choose from, options to come off the bench. Yeah, and I was, as you said, Adam, after the United game, we were disappointed not to win, and I was disappointed not to win. It doesn't mean anything in terms of our seasons now, other than the fact that you just want to win every game. And as I say, that's the benefit now under Moyes, is you feel like the approach is to go and win the game. In terms of Beto, I think it was just a case of, on another day, things could have been very different. I think, the brutal truth is he should have scored at least one, and he should be disappointed not to have scored all three. But I think it would be churlish to be critical, given the fact that, as we said before, he's scored 5 and 5, and without his goals, we don't have the points return from the last few games that we do. And in terms of effort, he's given everything. I mean, he's left absolutely everything out there, run himself ragged for the cause. Is it a case of some of his lack of composure and lack of quality at times coming through? Perhaps. But, again, He scored some vital goals at vital times, and he's replacing a striker with vastly more experience, but who was on a terrible run of form before he got injured. So, you can make the argument that the third chance that he has right at the end there doesn't even happen if it's not him, because of his ability to power past defenders. He's got that big stride, that big gait when he really gets moving. Calvert-Lewin doesn't have that ability to sort of to race away from a player like that. And so I think, again, he should score, but credit has to go. I think the credit has to go to the goalkeeper for that third chance. I think he makes a really good save. The first one where he tries to go around him, I think he snatches at that and a bit more. He could have tried the one that worked so well against Liverpool and against Leicester, that nice calm finish on the floor before the keeper can even get down. I think that probably would have worked. But I think, as we discussed on the last one, there's a danger he starts to get rumbled, if he's always trying the same finish. So, from that perspective, I can understand him trying something different. And again, another day he scores at least one, and we probably go on to win. But it's all, it's all experience. It's learning.
I was just so surprised he didn't go for the same finish.
Mm.
I could see it happening before it did. I was like, oh, Beto's there again. Here we go. And I just couldn't. I mean, the first one, I couldn't understand really what he was trying. I mean, it was a very strange. He was probably caught in two minds and ended up kind of weirdly putting it to quite a savable height on the goalkeeper's right. Well, the goalkeeper's right, his left, and I couldn't really see that was kind of a messy moment. The second one, it wasn't a great finish. I mean, the goalkeeper saves it with his armpit, doesn't he? It's very central by the time it kind of gets to the goalkeeper. Again, I thought to myself, just do what you did in those other games, but he didn't. The third one, I think the third one, like you said, it's if anything, it's a better angle for him, but it's a really good save. And I mean, at the time, I'm kind of doing the stereotypical, oh God, here we go. But actually, he's got plenty of credit in the bank, so he shouldn't be worried.
Yeah, I would say so. So in terms of Wolves, I think the only question is the same one as before Brentford, before we found out that Doucouré wasn't going to be there. Is Doucouré or Alcaraz to play in that role behind the centre forward?
Because again, Alcaraz is looking good in places, but Doucouré. Doucouré. It's a tough one. I would say away at Wolves, Doucouré starts. That's my feeling, and I would be also very happy if Alcaraz starts. I like our side at the minute. I like the fact that they will be well rested. I like the fact that they'll have had more time working together because even though the last couple of results haven't gone completely our way, we just look so much more cohesive, and it's been done during a flurry of games with a flurry of injuries, and having this breathing space gives us the opportunity to iron out some of those kinks, to find new ways to get Beto, keep him getting into those positions. But he did try weird things. I go back to it. He tried them. He tried something. Doesn't work. I'm very forgiving of Beto now, obviously, after his recent work. But I think the likes of Lindstrom, I said it earlier, you just feel like a few of them just need that one moment. But you're not desperately hoping for it anymore, which I'm going to guess takes some of the pressure off of them. So I reckon Doucouré will start, but out of that very limited choice that he's got, which is hopefully starting to extend at least to players like Irabunum coming off the bench and being able to affect it a little bit more. I fancy us. And I said it earlier, it's a side who we could really have been in a close run thing with. This could have been another Leicester or Leeds or one of those sides who we have to duke it out with and hope that Cunha does Cunha things, which he is doing anyway, and that's a big let off for us at the other end of the pitch. But to have that 10-point cushion over him, to be going there feeling pretty darn good about things. I fancy us to right some of those wrongs from Brentford now that we're a bit fresher. And that Beto's probably learned that he's got one really good finish in his locker, so maybe stick to that. I fancy this to be another well organised David Moyes away win.
I think we'll definitely get a positive result. Whether it's the win or the draw, I'm not sure, but Cunha not playing is huge. I mean, if you watched any of their games or even the highlights of their games in the last 6 weeks, I mean, there's very little good that's gone on there that hasn't gone through him or just been solely him, pretty much. So, so that's great for us. I think Decore will start, to be honest. I was thinking about the Alcaraz thing. We don't really know what the threshold is for this then becomes permanent, and even whether it starts or its appearances.
Or starts, yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know whether Everton might just keep themselves in control of that scenario by not starting him in games where we desperately don't need to win all of a sudden. It's different if you're going for, if you're really in the race and you desperately need him to play and whatever else, but we don't need that. We're pretty safe. I wonder whether Everton might just try and keep that in their control. I don't know what the threshold is, so I'm just kind of, I'm just hypothesizing there, but that could be another reason why he maybe comes off the bench rather than starts. Who knows? But yeah, I'm confident. I think the rest of the team will be the same. I don't see a reason why anything else changes apart from Decore comes back in. I think we've got to mention the kickoff time, which is 8:00 on a Saturday night. Now,
Yes.
I know for the fans going, that's dreadful because that's just a logistical nightmare. I must admit, from a TV audience point of view, it's an absolute winner, isn't it? I mean, that's
when they do it.
I mean, a Saturday night watching your team play football. I'm really surprised. I'm really surprised. I thought about it today that this hasn't happened much before. I mean, they've tried every other kickoff time every other day of the week, but we've never had a late Saturday. And really, have we? I mean, it's just not a thing, really. But I can imagine that being real market in the future if they're going to go down that way because, well, I'm almost looking forward to the fact it's a Saturday night, and I know that's really bad on the fans that have got to get there and back. And I know the Evertonians will be there selling the place out, and they'll be there. But I thought about it today and thought, why hasn't that been a thing for a while? I mean, it sounds like an obvious thing, really.
They've had a few. I think they kind of.
Have we?
We haven't. No,
I
think this is the first time, but it's not the first time this season that there have been 4 different what they call windows, of fixtures on a Saturday.
Okay.
And I think these are trial balloons. I think they're just seeing how they go because eventually that's where it's going. They're more and more staggered kickoffs, so you can have more and more games shown live. I mean, it's all about money, unfortunately. And yes, it is terrible from the traveling fans' perspective, but from a TV audience, the Premier League will say, "Oh, it's a no-brainer."
What you would say as well is we are more of a draw now in terms of you would rather watch us on a Saturday night if this was some of that football earlier this year.
That was the concern, particularly looking at it from an American perspective, is that if the idea is that there are all these millions of potential football fans to be won over on that side of the pond, then every fixture, every game is kind of an audition for a team to kind of grab someone's attention. And I was watching games and Sean Dyche thinking, who on earth would pick Everton on the back of this? Really. So yeah, I'm looking forward to us being fun to watch again. And and what happens in the transfer market this this summer could really have an impact on that for next season. Plus the fact that we've got this brand new stadium. That's I'm hoping there's a big deal is going to be made of that from the international broadcasters. So I know that the NBC crew over here like to do on the pitch. They every 2-3 times a season they bring the whole crew over. Rebecca Lowe is the presenter, comes over, and they all do the pitch side thing with Robbie Earle and Robbie Mustoe, and there's a potential that they could do it from Bramley-Moore Dock on the first day, or whatever, whether that's our first day, literally the first day of the season, or our first game. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think in terms of the Wolves game, if the idea is to lead with the press, I think Doucouré will start. I think you could see the press wasn't quite as effective with Alcaraz against Brentford. There were times when they played around us fairly easily, whereas obviously against Manchester United, that was one of the key tactics in that first half was Doucouré's energy and running alongside Beto. So I think, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts. Wasn't there some former director of Flamengo who said this week that he doesn't think that the threshold will be reached, and that maybe suggests what you were hinting at, Andy, that maybe it's based on starts?
I read that, and he was basically saying that he thought Everton would still get him, but cheaper.
Well, yeah, I suppose. I suppose that suggests that whatever the loan will expire, and then we'd need to arrange a different a new fee for him in the summer. That also exposes you to the danger of other clubs coming in for him. So
at least it's not a sort of Dele Alli situation in that we're staring down some kind of performance-related thing that could go very, very badly for us. But it's kind of a nice problem to have, isn't it? But I think regardless of that deal, on the balance of it, as you both said, Doucouré to start is the more sensible one. But good to have that option there of Alcaraz, and I would like to see more of him, obviously. To see whether he's worth splurging some money on. Early signs definitely point to yes, and out of all the loan signings that are left of the club, he seems the most likely, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think if we're looking at 12 to 14 million, which is what the report suggested, and I think he's definitely falls into that value for money category, given his age, given his his potential.
Yeah,
and he seems like a Moyes player. He reminds me a lot of Richarlison, actually.
Yeah,
in that shot,
the way he moves.
Yes,
the way he moves is similar.
Yeah, exactly. Bit of Richarlison in there, bit of Tim Cahill's feistiness. It's a good combination.
God, wouldn't be a bad player, would it?
It wouldn't be a bad player.
Cheers, Kevin.
Cheers, Kevin.
Hit.
Yeah.
All right. Should we play director of football for 5 minutes? Did just rifle through the contracts coming out this summer and what you'd do?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go through in positions. Ready? Jordan Pickford's out in 2027, so we forget about him for the time being. There's no doubt about him anyway. Both the other first team goalkeepers are out. So João Virginia and Asmir Begovic both out in the summer. What would you do?
Virginia is an interesting one, and it's a question more for him than us. I think he's a reliable backup, but at some point you got to think that he would like to start getting some first team football somewhere.
Yeah, totally agree. I think I can see him going for that reason. Would I be? I certainly wouldn't be disappointed to keep him, but you would then question him a little bit, I guess. And Begovic seems like a great guy to have around the dressing room, as well as if you're in a pub and get into a bit of a tiff. I would imagine he's surely sunsetting his career. Maybe he'll do a sort of Andy Lonergan and keep going a bit. But
yeah, agreed.
It's a position to look at. Although we have got a few sort of decent young goalies still out on loan elsewhere, so maybe one of them comes back into the fold. But you think that could be a potential area to recruit in the summer?
Defenders, Nathan Patterson and Jared Branthwaite and Jake O'Brien have got more than a year left anyway, so we'll forget about those. James Tarkowski would have 1 year left in the summer, as would Vitaly Mikolenko. The ones that are out in the summer are Michael Keane, Seamus Coleman, and Ashley Young, if you want to call him a defender. What would you do there?
It's tough.
I think Seamus is going to retire.
Yes.
Do you?
Yes, I think he's done. You know, he
Well,
can't stay fit.
I was interested by the shots from the Middle East. They did kind of a picture stack for every player, and Seamus's were very much not playing football.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, he's not even been involved in this, really. And I did think that was telling.
Mm.
He is supposed to be back in training, but I just think his calf, he just keeps getting, tightness in his calf that just he can't stay fit. And I think the word has been from him that he just feels as though his body's letting him down now.
You could see them getting him fit enough to have at least one game at Goodison before the end of the season.
Southampton at home would be lovely.
Yeah. And then obviously, sad to see him go, but yeah, with that context, and I think what we've seen over the last couple of years, it's someone who's consistently put his body on the line for the club, and would definitely be an area to look at recruiting in, particularly because of those other options. Ashley Young, I think we already played this game, and it was a tricky one. Then
Maybe, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it probably still is, and might depend on what other options are available in that position. I think to have him around the squad and use him as we've started to under Moyes, I'd give him a year. And I didn't think I'd really find myself saying that, but I think he's a great pro who's looked after himself well and is useful to have around. Michael Keane, I think it's time to say goodbye.
Yeah, I agree.
Goodbye.
Yes, he's on. He's on high wages, and I think he's the kind of player who could do really, really well for maybe one of the teams that comes up.
Yeah,
or a team that's sort of wanting to stay up next season. He's a decent enough centre half, but I think it's just time.
Yeah.
Something new for him, I think.
Tarkovsky and Mikolenko are interesting though. I think Mikolenko, there were talks about a deal, weren't there? But that's not happened yet. And Tarkovsky's one to look at with his age, despite both of their success. I'd say Mikolenko, you'd expect to see a new deal and like to see him stay.
Yeah, there's so much to do, isn't there, in the summer, honestly, because the 2026 contracts are as important as the 2025 ones, really, because you don't want someone going into the last year and then it's anybody's guess. I probably would like with Young, it's just Young, isn't it? I would say no, but then there's so much to do that you've got a player there that can play in about 4 different positions who would probably be quite happy to have an extra year.
That's why I was leaning yes.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Midfielders, obviously Mangala goes back. Elsewhere, Decore, Alcaraz, obviously, and Garner Gay are all up. Garner has 1 more year, James Garner, and Tim Irabunen has 2 more years.
I would like to keep Garner Gay.
Yes.
If he'll stay. If he's not looking for a big money move, say to the Middle East or whatever. I think we said that he was the first one that we covered, I think.
Yeah, he's a no-brainer, and he's clearly such a popular member of that side, and a big reason why players like Njai joined in the first place. So, no-brainer to keep him. Decore is another on that maybe pile with his wages. Becomes a bit trickier.
If he wants more money, I think it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
I think maybe with the new ownership and the PSR issue, easing, maybe you keep him around, but there's also a wage structure problem.
That's it.
That you don't want
the
to
hierarchy.
exacerbate. I think Jordan Pickford is obviously going to be up there towards that upper echelon. But, I think with new players coming in, we want to try and get our house in order better than we did, certainly under Ancelotti,
Yeah, it's dependent, but I think he's another one that would be useful to keep around, really, because there is so much to do.
Yeah.
Okay, and then strikers or forwards, should I say? The this is from the official website. So McNeil and Harrison fall into that category, as does Lindstrom. So the ones out: Calvert-Lewin, Jack Harrison, Armando Broja, and Jesper Lindstrom. They're all out this summer. McNeil and Chomity have 2, and Beto all have 2 more years, and obviously Njai is long term. I suppose that one comes down to Calvert-Lewin, doesn't it, really? What are you doing?
It comes down to Calvert-Lewin's wage demands, I think. The rumor was that he was after north of 130k a year or something, or wanted to be up there with the highest earners. I just don't think his goal return and his injury record justifies either. So if he can go and get that somewhere else, or, good luck to him. I just think for those reasons, and particularly his injury record, I would let them all go, actually, all 4 of those. It sounds as though Harrison, the director of football, cutthroat director of football. It sounds from the reports this week as though Harrison won't be retained. I don't think Lindstrom is going to show that he's done enough to warrant a £20 million fee, if that is what it is. I don't think Armando Broja is going to justify £30 million, as we said earlier. And I just think, like Michael Keane, it's time for Calvert-Lewin to go somewhere else, I think, and try the continent. I can't see he's going to have many suitors in the Premier League. Again, for his injury record and his goals record.
I mean, if he'd have done what Beto has done over the last couple of weeks and had a run of form, this would be a much trickier question for us to answer, and there would also be a lot more interest in him. But you said it comes back to that injury record plus high wages. I mean, he's a great free transfer for someone who we said it earlier with strikers, who wants to take a punt.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair to him, he's had a good year of fitness until he broke down this last time.
Yep.
And to be fair to him, I think he was rushed back by Lampard before he was ready. And I think that's kind of lies behind a lot of his problems. But the reality doesn't change the reality. The reality is that he is injury prone and doesn't score enough goals.
Yeah. So, I think I'm with you. I think they're out the door.
Yeah. I think the only one who's maybe got time for redemption, because you said it earlier, Andy, I think you're right on Broja. I think it would have to be a real quick turnaround, and the fee feels too high, and Chelsea are in a position where they can command large transfer fees or ask for them at least. Lindstrom is the one who could have a moment before the end of the season, and that fee starts to look like good business. But yeah, I agree on all the rest.
And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Napoli would loan him out for a second year. And in that case, I think he'd definitely be worth a punt.
Yes.
Given, as you say, Andy, all the work that needs to be done elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy with that.
So that's
I think we've got the job.
I'd say that's our bid to be a joint director of football.
A triumvirate.
We'll do it for not much.
I'm sure we could third whatever Kevin Thelwell was paid a week and be quite happy with that, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that. Yeah. There you go. Well, we'll be in touch with you, Freakins, and
yeah. You don't have my number, but I'm sure. Okay. Let's call time on it there. The Toughies, as we discussed, are in action on Saturday night. So tune back in early next week when we'll discuss the performance and the outcome from that game against Wolves, and perhaps more of the wider issues around the club if there is more news about restructuring off the pitch. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your week. Up the Toughies, and we'll be back on your proverbial airways next week.